Hello there and welcome back to the second video in the series in which I'm covering how to create successful drip campaigns as a real estate professional that'll actually turn your leads, your database, and those strangers into clients. We no longer want to have you having leads slip through the cracks, hundreds or thousands of leads collecting dust in your database, or we no longer want those leads to move on with other real estate agents because you simply didn't reach out or nurture enough or in the proper ways. So in the first video in this series, we covered what type of value and messaging you should actually be sending out to nurture the people in your database. And in this particular video, we're going to be covering the methods in which you can actually send those messages and that value to your database. Also the tech side of things to make sure that those messages are actually delivered and they're not getting stuck in those pesky junk folders. And then also the frequency in which you should be sending those messages to make sure you're not over communicating or under communicating, and we're doing it just right. If this is the first video you have ever tuned into on this channel, my name is Mason Armbruster and I'm the president and founder of Constant Closings, a real estate specific marketing company that helps solo agents, teams, and brokerages across the United States add an average of 3 extra clients a month and tens of thousands of dollars to their GCI through our strategic marketing systems that are all paired with multi-stage filtration systems that qualify their leads on autopilot. Now, at this moment in time, we're helping solo agents, teams, and brokerages all across the United States. And although we have those marketing strategies and those back-end filtration systems, a part of those filtration systems are those automated drip sequences that we use on top of the manual calling, texting, and emailing of the leads that we do for our clients. So we have years of experience creating these type of drip campaigns. And today I'm not only trying to show you how to display those messages to your leads and to your database, but also how to make sure they actually get delivered through those means and how to make sure you're actually doing it in an appropriate cadence and make sure you're not over communicating or under communicating. So let's dive into it. I'd like to start out by talking about the methods in which you can send that content to your database. You really have 3 different options in terms of these online means. You have your text options, you have your email option, and you have voicemail drops, and each have their own place respectively. I'd like to start off with emails. Emails are where you're actually going to be displaying most of your valuable content. So all that valuable content that I'm not going to dive into here, but feel free to watch that last video, all that content that we talked about in the last video will be sent or embedded in those emails that you will send to your database. It's the easiest way to get that information across because quite simply, nobody wants to receive a novel of a text message, but they don't mind if you put that information in an email. And then you have your text messages. And your text messages are going to be used in one of 2 ways. Either those text messages are simply going to be used to point those leads in the direction of the valuable content you sent them, meaning you send that valuable content in the email as we just mentioned, and then a couple minutes, automated of course, a couple minutes after that email goes out, you'll send an automated text message that says something along the lines of, "Hey John, hey Jane, I just sent you an email with X, Y, and Z. I thought you would find it valuable in your home search or your selling process, whatever the case may be," and then just leave it at that basically. So the whole goal with those text messages is to just simply point them in the direction of the valuable content you've sent their way. The second thing you're going to use your text messages for in your drip sequences is to simply engage in further conversation. So sending something that's not a statement, but more of a question that would lead to engaging in further conversation. Something along the lines of, "Hey, so-and-so, did you already find a home or are you still looking?" It's a very basic question that you can use to engage in further conversation. So again, text, you're either just going to be pointing in the direction of the valuable content or using it to engage further conversation by using a question rather than a statement. And last but not least, you have your voicemail drops. These options are great for an added personal touch because they allow you to add a voice message in the person's voicemail box. However, what they allow you to do, if you're not familiar with voicemail drops, it allows you to bypass the actual calling or ringing procedure with giving somebody a call, meaning you're not leaving these voicemails because you're calling people, waiting for it to ring, ring, and ring until you get the voicemail and then leaving your message. These are all automated voicemail drops, which most CRMs or like, for instance, the software that we use for all of our clients allow you to do. And again, most major CRMs will allow you to do that as well. These voicemail drops will bypass that ringing and calling procedure and simply drop that voicemail in their voicemail box, and it'll pop up just like they received a normal voicemail on their phone. And then they can listen to that recording, and it'll be like a nice little personal touch to say, hey, so-and-so, still looking forward to meeting with you. Or, hey, so-and-so, I just dropped the X, Y, and Z in your inbox. Feel free to check it out. Now, oftentimes you're going to be using the voicemail drops for more of the, hey, still looking forward to meeting you, that type of thing, more of an introductory to conversation and engaging with the lead. But you can use it in a way to point them in the direction, just like you would with some of your text messages as well. So that breaks down our email, text, and voicemail drops. And now we need to talk about how, if we're sending those emails and texts, we can do it in a way that your messages are not getting stuck in the junk mail box. So how you handle this part of the process is really going to depend on the amount of leads that you are generating. If you're generating any less than 50 leads a month, like you're getting 20, 30, 50 leads a month that you're generating from online means or a lead generation source, or even from referrals of people that you're putting in your database, whatever marketing means you're using, you really don't need to set up any extra tech things because you're not necessarily sending out enough messages to warrant that. But if you are generating well over 50 leads a month, my recommendation, even if you're at 60 leads a month, it's better to play it safe than sorry, because last thing you'd want to do is get your domain shut down for sending spam messages because they're all going to the junk mail box. And same thing with text messages. You don't want to get your phone number marked as spam either. So if you're generating under 50 leads, you can pretty much just go about hooking your email and your phone number up to your normal CRM or whatever software you're using. If you're generating over 50 leads a month and you're doing a lot of communication and there's tens, hundreds of emails and text messages automated that are going out on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, my recommendation is to use these tools. So when it comes down to text messaging, you're most likely going to pair up with a service like Twilio. A service like Twilio allows you to create and buy a phone number for a couple dollars a month that you pay for, and you can actually buy a local number that has an area code just like your phone number. So it can be very similar to your actual number, although it isn't, so your number never gets marked as spam. And Twilio simply allows you to send out messages at a discounted rate. So depending on how many messages you're sending out, it could be a couple cents per message, or it could be up to, like if you're sending a bunch of attachments and stuff like that, it could be as much as 5 to 10 cents per message, although that is very rare. Or you could always, of course, leverage a lead generation program that already partners with services like Twilio, such as our company, where we have so many people that we help across the US and we send thousands and thousands of messages on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis that we actually have a particular partnership with Twilio in which our messages are, each message that we send through the platforms and the nurturing sequences we build for our clients is only a seventh of a cent, rather than 1 cent, 5 cents, or up to 10 cents per piece. So you can go with any one of those options, but at the end of the day, if you're generating more than 50 leads a month, go with a service like Twilio, buy one of those like cheap $2, $1.50, $2 phone numbers you can use each month with an area code, with a number that looks almost identical to yours, so you can send those outbound text messages without getting marked as spam. Because the last thing you want as a real estate agent when you live on your device and you live on your phone is to have that main number get blocked or marked as spam so your future leads won't pick up your messages. And the cool thing about creating a Twilio number is you can actually set it up so that any calls that get made inbound to that number or back to you after you try to outbound dial somebody, it'll forward it to your actual device versus that fake number. So when people respond to your text messages and your nurture sequences in those campaigns that we're talking about creating now, it'll actually go to your actual device, like the device you use on a regular basis. So that's something you want to leverage for texting options if you are generating over 50 leads a month. And in the case that you're generating over 50 leads a month on the email side of things, most oftentimes you're going to want to use your CRM that you're already using or partner with a new CRM if you don't have one either, or somebody like ourselves who has their own custom CRM, and also pair that with a service called Mailgun. That's something that we use in particular for our agency. So again, with us sending hundreds and thousands of messages out on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis, we're sending so many emails that if we were to use the domain of our clients, let's say their team was firstrealestate.com, john@firstrealestate.com. If we were to send the emails from that domain at john@firstrealestate.com, like you would send your normal emails out, if you send too many messages from that, it'll actually mark your whole domain as spam. It won't necessarily get your domain shut down necessarily, but what it'll do is it'll keep you from being able to send future emails. That means even the normal emails that you would send out on a daily basis to your active clients would no longer be able to be sent, because in the online space, you would get put on like a spam watch list because you sent too many emails from your domain that your email is registered with. So you never want to use your main email if you are sending messages out to 50 plus more leads a month. What you want to do is partner up with a service like Mailgun in addition to your CRM. So your CRM oftentimes is simply going to link to your day-to-day email address, but instead you can go in the settings and you can change it and connect it to Mailgun. Now, it won't be necessarily a direct integration, but what Mailgun allows you to do is go on their website and create, you can buy a low-cost domain that's basically the exact same one you have, or what you can even do instead of pairing up with Mailgun is go to your existing provider if you already have your own website, whether that's Mailgun, whether it's domain.com, whether it's GoDaddy, all those type of services, they'll allow you to create a subdomain. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail in this video, maybe in another, but what you can do is go to those websites or go to Mailgun, create a subdomain, meaning if your website was First Real Estate, in the example that I used earlier, instead of it being www.firstrealestate.com, which is your main domain, you could create one that was drip.firstrealestate.com. So if you change that first part, it's what's considered a subdomain, which will allow you to send messages out so it looks like it's still being sent from your main domain. However, it's not. So if you send out so many messages that you start getting flagged as spam for whatever reason, or because people aren't liking the content you're sending out because you aren't following the guidelines that we talked about in the last video, then instead of your main domain getting flagged as spam and none of your normal day-to-day emails being able to be sent from your Gmail inbox or your personalized email that you've created for your business, it'll only shut down the subdomain and mark that as a spam, like a spam domain, and then you can simply create another one and attach it and continue to send your messages. So again, just to summarize, you can either use the platform that you already have to host your website, whether that's GoDaddy, domain.com. Again, you can use Mailgun, which is something that we use, to create those subdomains and actually send your emails that way. So rather than sending your emails, for example, again, from john@firstrealestate.com, what you would send it from is john@firstrealestatedrip.com, or whatever the case may be when you created that subdomain. And again, if you're looking for more video content on that, stay tuned to future videos where I'll probably dive into it in more detail. But to get started, if you want to do that, you can of course go to any one of those websites on Mailgun, GoDaddy, or domain.com, and they'll show you how to easily set up a subdomain and connect it to your CRM so that when you're sending those messages outbound, if you ever get marked as spam, it'll mark the subdomain and not your full domain and shut down your entire business and email inbox. Now, we've talked about the methods of sending them, we talked about deliverability, and now we need to talk about the biggest thing that I most frequently get asked about as a owner of a real estate marketing agency. And that is, how frequently should I be sending out these messages? When should I send them? What should I say? All that type of stuff. So again, in the last video, we talked about what to say, what to send out. And now I want to talk about a little bit of a schedule. But before we jump into an actual schedule that I'll show you that you can follow as a guideline that works extremely well for all of our clients across the United States, I want to talk about emails and text messages. So we talked about those earlier in the methods. We have our emails, texts, and voicemail drops. Your voicemail drops are going to be used least frequently. So that's oftentimes going to be used at the very beginning when you're simply looking to build that rapport as quickly as possible and get them on the phone closer to the time in which the leads have actually been generated. Then from there, most of your drip sequences and your valuable content is going to be sent through email. So if we're basically talking about least to most used methods in terms of frequency of communication, your voicemail drops are going to be the least common. Your text messages are going to be the next common because those are going to always be paired up with an email. And then your emails are going to be the most valuable and most frequently used methods of communication that you use. Again, because you can capture everything in one big message without sending a novel text messages. And then you can just use those text messages to point them in the direction of the emails. So again, most of your content that you're sending out through this schedule that I'm about to walk through are going to be emails. There's going to be a few text sprinkled in there, and then just a couple voicemail drops that are optional, which we'll talk about. And now let's jump into the schedule. Now, before I break down the schedule for the first 2 to 3 weeks, I do want to preface by saying there is no one particular cure-all or correct schedule for sending out your messages. You could have 2 or 3 agents that all have successful drip campaigns, and all of them could do it slightly differently. So I just want you to keep that in mind. What I'm sharing in this video is simply the schedule and the type of messaging that we send out for all of our clients that has a very high success rate that has allowed them to see a significant return on their investment and to really capitalize on as many leads as possible out of the leads they're generating and their database that they have that was formerly collecting dust. So I just want to keep that in mind. Now, with that being said, let's jump into it here. So with the initiate contact campaigns, it's meant to initiate that contact when you first reach out to a lead, as we mentioned. So on day 1, you immediately, after that lead is generated, you want to have something set up in your CRM to send out an immediate text message like a minute after that lead is being generated. And then you want to follow it by an email. And those 2 first texts and emails are basically going to be a, hey, let's connect type of email where you're saying, hey, let's connect. I saw you were looking for X, Y, and Z. Let's see if I can help you out. That type of deal. Now, you also want to send an automated message 1 hour later on day 1 with a text followed by another email saying you didn't hear back. Now, of course, you need to set this up in your CRM in a manner that this only goes out if you do not actually hear back. So if the person responds, they should not get these messages. But if they don't respond, they should get a text followed by an email 1 hour later that says, hey, so-and-so, I didn't hear back from you. I was hoping to get a hold of you so I could provide you X, Y, and Z like you asked about, or whatever the case was for the particular marketing that you were running. And then, of course, on the first day, you have an optional voicemail drop. So we do this with some clients, not with all of our clients, but it can be successful, especially if you're the type of agent that prefers more personal contacts. Because what it'll allow you to do is, again, skip that ringing or that calling process, drop that voicemail where you can introduce yourself, let them know that you really have their best interest in mind, you're a real person, and you're looking forward to helping them. And then oftentimes that can help out with engagement and get somebody to respond back to you because they may not recognize your phone number when you're reaching out to them, especially if you've generated a lead through online means. But if you do that voicemail drop, then they'll know you're a real person that's actually looking to fulfill on whatever marketing that you displayed to them. So that's day 1. On the second day, if you still have not heard back from that person, then you want to send them an email that says, hey, are you still interested in X, Y, and Z? If you haven't heard from them, then on day 5, you want to send a text followed by another email to try to reach out to them. On day 8, another text. And then your optional on day 8, what we do sometimes is the optional thing here is to lead with a voicemail instead. So you could lead with a voicemail drop on day 8, which is about 7 days, 1 week later from when you had your initial voicemail drop on day 1. And you can lead with a voicemail drop saying, hey, still looking forward to reach out to, but I haven't been able to get a hold of you. And then you can follow up with a text message that says the same exact thing or simply points them in the direction of the voicemail so they can listen to that personal touch of hearing your voice. And then if they haven't responded, then you want to send another text followed by an email on day 12 and then again on day 17. And again, keep in mind, you're only sending all these out and they're only receiving these if they have not responded. Then they continue to the next day of the follow-up. Now, if after day 17, which is 2.5 weeks later, and they still have not responded, then you want to transition them into more of a long-term nurture drip campaign. And that's weeks 3 and beyond. So I want to break this down now because there's going to be different frequencies of communication. And the longer the time goes by in which the person is not responding to you, the less frequently you're going to be reaching out to them or bothering them because you don't want to over-communicate. You want to walk that fine line of not under-communicating, but not over-communicating either. So once those first 2.5 weeks have passed, if they still have not reached out, then we want to break down what you should do in terms of frequency for your messaging weeks 3 and beyond. So weeks 3 through 5, if that person has not responded, then you want to be reaching out and sending an email twice per week. Now, when I say emails twice per week, I'm referring to the emails we talked about in the last video in this video series, or the first video, the last video that I filmed. And that is that valuable content. So that's where you're providing those valuable videos on market updates, tips, tricks, hacks, buyer's guides, seller guides, all that type of stuff. So weeks 3 through 5 in the follow-up with that lead, you should be reaching out and sending one of those valuable content emails twice per week. It's up to you when you send them. I would recommend trying them out on different days. So maybe week 3 through week 4, you send them on Tuesday and Thursday, or oftentimes you want to do like one day during the week and one day during the weekend, and then you can see and test your open rates to figure out what days people are opening most of their messages. But we'll talk about that more in the next video in this series. Now, that's what you want to do for weeks 3 through 5. If you've gone through those weeks and they still have not responded, weeks 6 through 8, you then want to transition to only reaching out once per week. So again, this is where if they still haven't responded, your efforts are better spent with the people earlier on in the process who've come in more recently. And at the same time, you don't want to be constantly just throwing stuff and throwing more stuff into their email inbox to the point that they're going to want to unsubscribe from your list or mark you as junk, and then you get your domain marked as spam and all that good stuff. So weeks 6 through 8, you want to reach out with one of those valuable emails once per week, and feel free to sprinkle in those text messages in there every now and then, not with every email. So you can send out those text messages that say, hey, John, hey, Jane, I sent you an email with X, Y, and Z, thought you would find it helpful. You can do that, but it's very important to note you do not want to do that with every single email. It's simply too much. As you can imagine, if you were sending an email even twice per week and the person didn't necessarily open up to you yet, and somebody was reaching out to you, for them to send an email and text you every time they email you would just be a little excessive. So weeks 6 through 8, you want to do one valuable email per week. And of course, through weeks 3 through 8, if you want to sprinkle in a few text messages to point them in the direction to make sure they're actually engaging, then you can, but don't overdo it. And then weeks 8 through 10, sometime between weeks 8 through 10 is when you want to start transitioning into once every other week. So if week 8 has passed, that's 2 months. If they still have not responded at that point, you want to start making sure that you're not sending out too many messages, that you're over communicating, getting marked as spam, or that you're not over communicating in a sense that you're racking up a bill by sending too many emails or too many text messages through your CRM. Of course, there's typically a cost associated with each one of those outbound messages. And if those people haven't responded after 2 months, they will respond eventually, most likely, if you are sending out the right valuable content. Now, that still doesn't mean, though, that you want to rack up a huge bill in the meantime and send them way too many messages. So week 8 through 10 is when you want to transition into once every other week, so you're not over communicating or overspending on your automated message bills. Then after you get to week 10, which is, again, about 2.5 months in, if they still have not responded, you want to continue those messages, but you simply want to keep the same cadence. So send one really valuable email message once every 14 days and just continue with that until the person has responded. And that's it. You just want to keep hitting them up with that cadence until they are converted. Now, you'll often find that people may be in there for months, or if you have a really good, in-depth, valuable drip sequence that lasts beyond a year, like a lot of our clients do, a lot of those people will convert or interact before the actual drip sequence is up, which you'll often find if you're putting the right valuable content in, like we talked about in the last video. But if they don't, and if you're still becoming accustomed to creating really good drip sequences, and you think that they've been in there longer than the 3-month campaign you put together or 4-month campaign, then what you can do is send out what we call database reactivation campaigns. So every so often, like every 2 to 3 months, what you can do is send out a mass text message or email to everyone in your database that has not converted or hasn't messaged you back yet to those drip sequences, and send them, again, an open-ended question to get them to re-engage in conversation. That's what we call database reactivation campaigns. And again, it can be something along the lines of, hey, so-and-so, it's been a while since we spoke. Have you found a home, or are you still looking? So anything along those lines to get them to re-engage in the conversation. So that's it. In the last video, we talked about what type of valuable content to put out. In this video, we talked about the methods. So just to summarize, you have 3 different methods of sending your messages out. You have email messages, which is where all your valuable content will be sent to those individuals. You have your text messages, which are either used to point people in the direction of those emails to remind them you sent them to them, or to send a text message to simply engage in further conversation, or voicemail drops at the very beginning of your initiate contact sequence to add that extra personal touch. And then of course from there, if you're sending messages out to 50 plus leads per month, our recommendation on the tech side of things is to partner up with somebody like Twilio to get a number that's very similar to yours, but will keep yours number from being noted as spam. And then same thing on the email side of things, you either want to partner up with a service like Mailgun or the server and provider that you already use to display your website and create a subdomain and send your emails through the subdomain email address versus your main email address, so your main email doesn't get shut down. And then you have your schedule. So in those first 2 weeks or so, those first 2 to 3 weeks, you want to be reaching out with the schedule that we listed above, just about every day or every other day. And then once you get to week 3 through 5, you want to be reaching out with those valuable emails twice per week. And then when you get to weeks 6 through 8, you want to transition to doing it once per week. And then when you get to weeks 8 through 10, you want to start making that transition to sending those emails out once every other week, but making sure, of course, they're still very valuable content. So you can make up for the fact that you're only sending a message bi-weekly. And then weeks 10 and beyond, you simply want to keep the same cadence and reach out once every 14 days. And if you do all of those things, and in those messages and in that frequency, you're providing the content that we talked about in the last video, then you're sure to convert those strangers into clients. But your work isn't done there. After you've created the drip sequences, just like in your marketing, you need to do a little bit of split testing, because that first campaign that you put together may not convert as many people as you would like to. And so just like if you were running advertisements online and you have 2 campaigns running at the same time to see which performs best, so you can keep this one running and shut this one down if it doesn't work, you want to do the same thing with your drip sequences. So on that note, in the next video and the last video in this video series, I'm going to be covering how you can actually split test your drip sequences to make sure you're getting the most out of them, and most of your conversions are coming earlier on in that drip sequences, and finding out which of your messages are performing the best. So if you found this video helpful and you want to know how to split test those drip sequences and make sure you're getting most of your lead conversions earlier on, like most agents want to, then feel free to click the subscribe button and stay tuned for that next video.